Skilled Carer is here to provide more than just care. We support families, participants, support workers, care teams and the community to understand disability, reduce stigma, grow capacity, promote happiness and achieve dreams. I started Skilled Carer to provide sustainable growth, trust, integrity and education to the industry. We do this by employing reliable and responsible support workers with high integrity and moral fibre. We educate and support them within the industry, and we liaise with families to find sustainable solutions to their lives and facilitate their needs. Our goal is to enable each person we support to live the life they choose. We facilitate our clients' goals, which may be to rejoin the workforce, get and hold a job or career, master everyday tasks, gain ownership and independence, or access community services, as well as anything else they need and are searching for. We provide education through the zones of regulation to help the individual learn and understand their emotions, recognise others, and implement strategies to help them regulate their emotions and reduce behaviours. Hello and welcome to this episode on autism. Today we're going to be discussing how to assist adults and children with autism. Autism or autism spectrum disorder is a neurodevelopmental disorder, and it affects communication, social interaction, and behavior. It can manifest differently in each person, but there are some common strategies that can be helpful in supporting individuals with autism. I ummed and ahed about whether to direct support workers and parents to different resources, and I wasn't sure, without doing a hell of a lot of research into those resources that I was directing people to, I wasn't sure if that would be a reliable, explanation on my philosophy and thoughts about the disorder. And so I thought it was about overdue that we create a podcast on one that our support workers and anyone in the community can listen to, and hopefully some of the experiences that I've had in the field will relate to people. I'm by no means would consider myself an expert. I don't have a degree in the education behind it, disorders, but my experience working within a special needs setting and working as a support worker for 7 years now with people with autism, has given me a lot of experience working with speech pathologists, psychologists, families, individuals, and a lot of professional development and use cases from experience, within the classroom day in, day out. So I feel like I have a lot to, some of my advice might be beneficial to people. So on that, we'll go shallow in some parts and deep in others, and I'm sure there'll be some gaps, and I guess it's my overall philosophy. So it's very individual to my experience and that of the communities that I've experienced. So autism affects communication, social interaction, and behavior. It can manifest differently within each person, and so if you've met one person with autism, that's it. You've met one person with autism. You cannot categorize that one experience and create a blanket rule and say this is how you treat someone with autism. We're all individual. We all have our idiosyncrasies, and we're actually all sit on the autism spectrum. So everyone has autistic traits, and I guess to provide some general tips for supporting individuals with autism, that's the aim of this. Whether that's children or adults or people, with a combination of other disorders too, or intellectual disability, trauma background, ADHD, anxiety, and other mental disorders. You cannot come across someone with autism and go, okay, I know how to handle this situation. It's just like this. That's why I guess, skilled carer as a company have those underlying and overarching um, philosophies on kindness, trust, and integrity. Because when you come back to kindness, and when you come back to treating people with respect, and putting them first, and putting kindness first, and forgetting about the way that they might have treated you, and trying constantly to be kind, that's the approach that I think is the most important thing. One of the most important things to keep in mind is that each person with autism is unique, with their own strengths and challenges. Some things can be beneficial, like creating structured and predictable environments, using clear and concrete language, providing visual support such as schedules or picture cards, particularly for those younger or with intellectual disability as well. It's important to be patient, understanding, and non-judgmental. Within the home, parents and caregivers can give a visual schedule for daily routines if that has been an issue, and that's something that the child or the individual struggles with. Such as getting dressed and brushing your teeth. To help the person know what they can expect. You can use social stories or role playing to teach social skills and appropriate behaviors. In schools, some teachers will use visual aids as well, like picture cards and graphic organizers, outlining the student's day, where their class is, what class it is, and where they're expected to go and do. And that's to support learning and provide a predictable routine. Using positive reinforcement, praise and rewards to encourage positive behavior, that's something that's going to work well with anybody, as well as kids with autism. Now, for adults with autism, however, it's important to focus on building independence and self-advocacy skills. This, again, around structured routine and daily activities, meal planning and scheduling appointments, or using technology or other supports to manage daily tasks. It can be helpful to provide opportunities for social interaction and skill building. Socially, joining a group or taking a class, and that's where a support worker can help, particularly an educated support worker who understands what they're doing. They can help facilitate and guide in a safe and respectful way where traumas aren't going to be created. The role of therapy in supporting individuals with autism, can be beneficial, particularly for those who are experiencing challenges related to social interaction, communication, or behavior. There's different types of therapy: behavior therapy, social skills training, cognitive behavioral therapy. It's important to work with therapists who have experience with autism, and I often notice that it's really hard to find openings in these types of supports because they're inundated with people wanting to get these supports, and for proactive parents and support coordinators who are really good at organizing that and prioritizing that, it makes it hard for everyone to fit in. So yeah, it's a challenge. It's a place where we're sort of underskilled. Providing as much predictability and structure and preparation for change. So if there is going to be change, talk about it. Don't defer from it and think, well, it's going to trigger them. So what I'll do is I'll wait to the very last minute, and then I'll let them know, because then I won't have to deal with the meltdown or the issue because I'm leaving, or it's going to be somebody else's problem. That's not a proactive way in handling that situation. Assist them in help seeking, so checking in with the individual and modeling to them how to seek help. Talk to them about their sensory needs and adapt. listen to what they're saying, what they want, and what they need. Talking to them as an individual and asking them, what is it? What is it that's going on? Is it, sometimes they can have a very rigid thinking on certain fixations, like the tapping of noise or the lighting or the positioning of where they are and where they sit, particularly in a classroom. If you've got them facing different things or, out the window where there's a lot of action or, somewhere within the room that's next to someone who does tend to tap their knee, or a student that's can be feeling anxious or playing with their pen, they're going to be hyper fixated on that sound and not able to concentrate, and just, I guess, trying to be more aware of what's happening there. Use concrete language. Autism, it is something where pragmatic communications are extremely difficult to understand. So, avoiding sarcasm and keeping it brief and literal and keeping it short can be beneficial. Change tasks and things you want to do, in order to access their interests. Provide your instruction to them through multiple ways. That might be through a presentation. If you're introducing them to somebody new, a successful approach that I've seen that really works well is create a presentation. If they some basic information about the person, depending on their cognitive level, it might be more intricate, or it could just be some basic things about their favorite football team, the car they drive, the animals that they have, the name of their dogs, where they live. Provide that information in a PowerPoint presentation and they can access it. Someone can show that to them. Then when they meet the person, the anxieties are gone. They know the person. They're more likely to have a really positive approach in the way that they view this strange person that's come into their home or their environment to meet them. Focus on the effort, rather than the results and the outcome. If they're putting in effort, that's huge. That's a win. That's what we praise. We praise the effort. We teach effort. We don't teach the outcome because, you haven't understood the question and you've answered it completely wrong. Big cross, try again. No, that's amazing. And then, some constructive criticism, sure. We are trying to align them. We're not trying to, I guess, coddle them and wrap them in bubble wrap and make them think that everything they've done is fantastic and correct when it's not. But you praise the effort, and then you can redirect with a little bit of, I guess, tactful, alignment to the task or what the question was asking. That's in terms of a classroom context and setting, but you can relate that, to your own world. Scaffolding instructions and breaking them down into 1 or 2 steps, particularly with people with a combination of intellectual disability and autism or ADHD. If it's too complicated, if there's too many steps, it's not going to work. It needs to be some 1 or 2, 1, 2 or 3 really basic things that need to be done to successfully complete whatever it is you're trying to do. If we're cooking, if we're getting ready for school, if we're heading out on the weekend, what do we need to do? 3 things. Don't overcomplicate it. And scaffold social interactions as well where possible. Putting people with autism in a social situation is like putting them on Mars and asking them to speak Martian. We use social, facial, and body language to communicate. It's something like 80 to 90% of our communication is through those means. And for people with autism, they can't detect it. Their pragmatic communication skills don't pick that up. If whenever I would get a haircut over the weekend, I'd come back on Monday, and you knew within 5 minutes of meeting the kids whether it was a good haircut or not, because they'll come straight up and they'll tell you. And you know, we it was generally the autistic kids that would do that. They think that they're being helpful. They're very literal, and they struggle with the sarcasm. So yeah, you knew straight up whether you whether you need to go back for a touch up or not, or maybe you couldn't take that stuff too seriously. Communication is robotic for ASD. It's not fluid. So giving wait time, um, it's a positive to help them interpret what's being said. Some of us, including myself, tend to talk really quickly. I'm always thinking of what I can say next, instead of standing there, sitting and listening to what the person's actually saying. And then if there's a moment of silence, I've always sort of felt like I'm a bit socially awkward. So if there's a moment of silence, I'll fill it with words, whereas I've had to teach myself to just sit there, enjoy the silence, allow the silence, and that brings upon an understanding and an opportunity to interact. Some people with autism, they don't want relationships, friendships. They need to be. They don't value them. They don't see it as important because of the way they're wired. And again, autism's individual. There's no one size fits all approach. So scaffolding, and by scaffolding, I mean giving conversation starters. I talk a lot about. I guess I talk to young boys, and I talk to them about how they approach girls, and then they're what they would do. Are they girls that they like? And I try to open up that conversation, because I'm someone that they trust to talk to about these things, and it's an opportunity to guide them in how they create relationships, safe and meaningful relationships. With everything that you see online, and it being, I guess, an uncomfortable conversation for parents. People at school, staff probably aren't going to go into it much either. So they don't have that guidance and that outlet, and someone to speak to that can guide them in a safe and meaningful way. And so I scaffold these things about, here are some questions that you can ask. You can ask them, what football team they go for, what things that they like, what do they like to do on the weekends. And for a person with autism, they don't always think of this stuff. They're not thinking about what you think and what you feel. Their main focus can be on themselves and their own needs. Give a warning. If you're switching tasks or tracks, give a warning, and especially after they've been focusing, for a long time on a certain task, they'll need, hey, we're finishing that in 5 minutes. We're finishing that in 15 minutes. Counting down. Hey, a couple more minutes, and we're jumping off that now. They'll also struggle to complete a task that's not linked to their interest. And for most of it, that we can completely understand that. It's partly why a lot of us thought, oh, school, no, I hated school. What am I going to need algebra for? What am I going to need Pythagoras theorem for? When something's concrete and you can relate it to the real life factors, I always found that provided much more tangible understanding and connection with the subject. Give the expectation that they feel is you need to give them choices so that they have some sense of control. That works well with everyone. That works well with kids, regardless of disability. And a lot of these things are, I guess, overarching, and they will work with all different types of disability and with everyone in society. And so it's just a general overlying way of showing respect in the way we interact. There's some really interesting jobs, and people can be really successful with autism with their deep focus that they can create. Video game designers have to spend hours, hundreds of hours, focusing meticulously on different design factors, architects, draftsmen, and being able to focus and work, fastidiously until the task is complete. Whereas for someone like myself, yeah, I could focus for a couple of hours and then my eyes are just fried and I need to step away and go do something active, throw a basketball, go kick a footy, do something, go to the gym. So just to finish with, I just wanted to look into some recent studies and provide some context and data and information around autism to provide some understanding to people. Um, so there was a study in Sweden that found that autistic folks with, average to high intelligent quotients were twice as likely to struggle with addiction to alcohol or drugs. Um, Drugs are sometimes used to cope with social stress and sensory problems. And there's a high prevalence of behavioral impulsivity or addiction to shopping, gambling, internet gaming among autistics. There's a podcast on habits that discusses some of the mental reasoning behind this and our biology and how that works, as well as some strategies to curb habits and influence in a positive direction those decisions and those habits. Um, Significant higher rates of OCD because there's similar neural circuitry involved with autism and OCD. Self-harm as may occur as an attempt to regulate sensory load or difficult emotions, and it's more common among autistic girls as well as autistic, trans, and gender diverse cohorts. A recent a longitudinal study, which studies over a longer period of time rather than just a snapshot involving 6.5 million people, found that autistics 3 times more likely to both attempt suicide and die by suicide. More elevated in women and those with mood disorders like anxiety or depression as in a combination with autism. And here in Australia, we're so lucky to have the NDIS where we have these outlets and these opportunities for government funded and taxpayer funded occupational therapy, speech pathology, educated support workers to guide and assist our young people and our disability cohort. That it really is a privilege, and it's we're so lucky to have it. Also more likely to struggle with eating disorders, anorexia more so than bulimia. Um, Neurotypicals tend to have higher rates of LGBTQI community plus and questioning. People who don't identify with the sex they were assigned at birth are 3 to 6 times more likely to be autistic than cisgender people, and it's 2 to 3 times higher the prevalence of it in autistics. There's also an elevated risk of having co-occurring mood disorders like depression and anxiety. So as you can see, these things do interlink. There's a higher, with autistic people, there's a higher likelihood of depression and anxiety, which then occurs, without getting support or focusing that in the right way and knowing what your outlets are and how to educate yourself or having supportive people around you. That then leads to, self-harm and down that pathway and, eating disorders and all these different things that work together as a compounding negative effect on the outcomes. According to one of the studies, 79% of autistics met the criteria for a co-occurring psychiatric condition at least once in their life, being anxiety or depression, mood disorders. So you can check out our website for more resources. We're also in the process of putting up some autism screening devices and creating a course for implementing and using the zones of regulation as a parent, support worker, carer, or independent person. Accessing that is something that I'm really passionate about, providing that education and information to the community. That'll come out later in the year. And get in touch if you'd like to discuss anything. Thanks again for taking the time to listen. Stay tuned for further episodes released weekly. If you want to get in touch with me or a support worker from Skilled Carer, please contact us at skilledcarer@gmail.com. Check the website, www.skilledcarer.com, or leave a voice note here. We are always keen on chatting with people about opportunities and learning how we can support you and your family to make your life easier.